And I want to pose the question to you, why should we keep up with the news media if almost all of it is falsehood and disinformation?
I think the issue has less to do with information that's out there and more, how do you interpret that information? Man is on the religion of his companions. If his companions are those who are interested in the affairs of the Ummah, you will naturally become a man of the Ummah. You'll be able to speak about Pakistan despite not being Pakistani. You will speak about Kashmir though you're not Kashmir. I know it because I'm a man of the Ummah, because my network are people of the Ummah. The Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. If he's your brother, you check in on your brother, you ask about your brother. How many of the youth go and learn about the history of these places? How do you know that you're going to live like tomorrow?
Brother Sami Hamdi, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Thinking Youth.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair for making the time to meet with us. So today I want to talk about your journey with political analysis. And I think one of the things that we are seeing often is after October 7th, a lot of youth were activated to do something and they started to understand the world at a very rapid rate because that's, the rate that it was changing in. And something that I see with a lot of youth who are trying to understand the world is they feel that their knowledge base is deficient, so they turn to the news, but then quickly they realize, as the news covers Gaza, news media is corrupted with a taint of disinformation that's often agenda-driven. So they throw out the baby with the bathwater and they think that there's no value to reading the news. And I want to pose the question to you, why should we keep up with the news media, with the news, if almost all of it is pretty much falsehood and disinformation?
I don't think it's necessarily that all of it is false misinformation. I think that a lot of it is certainly skewed based on the biases of those who are presenting that news, but that doesn't take away from the fact that everybody's analyzing an event that actually happened. So the Jabalia refugee camp was bombed. The CNN and New York Times were indicating that it was justified because the Israelis were trying to kill some sort of Hamas commander. And those were the Palestinians and were saying that the Jabalia refugee camp is a refugee camp, it's illegal, it's under international law. Here, what's relevant is the fact that the bomb fell on the Jabalia refugee camp, and that's an event that took place, and you put that into the wider context, and you start to understand the dynamics of what's happening, and that before they were not bombing hospitals, they were worried about the reaction, then they bombed the hospital, they tried to deny it, and when there was no international reaction, they started bombing all of the various different hospitals. The point is, the fact itself, when you peel away the biases, remains that fact. How you choose, what you choose to do with that fact is based on your own biases and your own readings and your own lens in what you do. And that's why I think that there is merit also. Somebody earlier, we're speaking at the Prophetic Strategy Summit here in Malaysia at the moment. Somebody said to me, there's a news that's going viral of such and such happening, but it's probably fake, so it's irrelevant. I said, even fake news can be relevant because you ask yourself why it's being spread, who spread it, what's the aim of it, who's trying to ruin who, why are they trying to ruin that person?
It's really reading between the lines.
Not just reading between the lines, reading it for what it is, it's the reality is all of these things, they make an impact, they make a difference. I think the issue has less to do with information that's out there and more, how do you interpret that information? What framework exists that allows you to interpret the information? What lens do you need in order to interpret the information? That's a completely different discussion. But I think that those who avoid the media entirely and live themselves in a blackout, or even like those who are off social media and they like to brag that they're off social media because it means that they're not involved in what's going on like in day to day, I think there is merit in keeping up to date with what everybody is saying, including those you don't like.
And that's a great segue into the next question I had, which is how important is it to properly analyze the events around you? How important is it to actually have a framework that you use to understand the world around you?
I think that I'm wary of answering this question definitively.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny, yesterday I was sitting with somebody from the German contingent and she said to me, I don't know much about politics. She's very active, in the community, very active in projects, very active in political projects, but she said, I don't understand politics, I don't know politics. And I want to find a framework that lets me know politics. And maybe it was late at night and I was a bit drunk on tea. I said to her, but it's the fact that you don't know that makes you so good at politics. She said, what do you mean? So we have a friend who ran for elections many years ago. He dabbled in politics. He didn't know, let's put that between quotation marks. And so he had gathered people, listened to advice, was very willing to take on different people's expertise, and he achieved a shock result, and he actually managed, to win a couple of the races. Since then, he didn't win a single race. But after he won the race, he had announced that he understood politics. Do you see the irony of it? In that when he didn't know, he won. When he knew, he lost. Let me rephrase that. When he didn't know, he won. When he believed he understood, when he believed that he knew politics, he lost. The implication being is there is no framework that allows you to correctly understand every event that you're seeing.
Why? Why is that?
Because you will never have all of the facts that are available at your disposal. The facts are relevant insofar as they inform what you intend to do next. For example, we hear that Marjorie Taylor Greene in the US is now campaigning. She has tweeted and said, I disagree with the bill in Congress that seeks to punish anyone boycotting Israel with a fine of $1 million and jail time. And she says, I think this is against the right of freedom of speech. Now, none of us usually follow Marjorie Taylor Greene. But that sudden set of words that she said means that when you are now lobbying to get that bill removed, you know now who to target. What I'm saying is, you didn't learn much from it in terms of, but it informed what your next move is. So it's not that you know everything that's happening. It's that piece of information is valuable because it gives you something to work with. Politics, people say often, is a science of possibilities. That's true. But I also think it's a science of human nature. Humans naturally forget. Humans naturally are confused. Humans naturally can be sad. Humans naturally can be happy. Humans can exaggerate. Humans can lie. Humans can, have euphoria. Humans can be depressed. And all of that affects the way we communicate. All of that affects the way... There's so many different dynamics. It's impossible to have all of those dynamics. But it is possible to find pieces of information that are relevant enough to inform your set of action, because politics is not thought. Politics is not just words. Politics is action and people moving in different ways and all these pieces starting to fit together. So I think it's less about a framework of analysis. I actually think the most fundamental framework of politics, in my opinion, is always remember you don't know everything that happened. You know some of it, and there's some that you don't know that could affect what you choose to do. And if you accept that as the first premise, you will always be successful. The moment you say you know is the moment you come out with statements like, Palestinians should suffer in silence.
I came to work with the OBGYN and urology department to help take care of patients who have pelvic floor disorders. I've spent my time also doing some cesarean sections, but mostly teaching and working with the physicians here and the young residents and junior doctors.
Ambreen Salimi is an American doctor working in Gaza for the past 3 weeks.
I have seen so much malnutrition here.
She says many patients struggle to fight off infections and heal from serious injuries because they're starving.
I've seen it in the pregnancies that we see. I've seen it in the babies that come out. I've seen it walking through the emergency room with the kids and the men and women. So I see it everywhere. I see it in the staff who every day talk about how hungry they are. And they still, again, show up for work. It's amazing.
How do you read the news, Sami Hamdi, as a political analyst? I'm sure you get this question a lot.
Someone came to me once and I answered him sincerely. They said, Brother Sami, I want to know what you read for breakfast. And I told him, you really don't want to know. And he goes, no, I want to know so that I can, be a political analyst. I told him I read the gossip section in the BBC Football, to see what the transfers are. I
was expecting goals on TikTok.
Yeah, like who's going where, or the kind of thing, you scroll through you see the highlights from the previous matches, or that, I don't kind of thing. But on a serious note, you follow the headlines of what everybody is saying, you have those headlines. But there are people that who are well placed, not in government, but people who follow things specifically. Networks is very important. For example, you see, I gave this example to somebody the other day. They asked this question, and I didn't know how to answer it in abstract concepts. So I said, let me give you an example. Let's say the Houthis have decided Houthis seized the ship on the Red Sea. And I want to know more about it. But I can't talk to the Houthis directly, albeit I know quite a few of them, but on a personal basis. So I decide to meet with somebody who's associated with the international recognized government.
Mhm.
And I want to find out if they took the ship, what could possibly happen next? Because I'm not finding much in the American media on what they can do with it.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting with him for a coffee, and he's like just a journalist. Not just a journalist, he's a nice guy, because I think he'll recognize who he is when I say this, and I don't want to offend him. In any case, so he said something to me, I remember along the lines of, he goes, you know, do you see what the Houthis did? Like how they took the sea and stuff. So I said to him, but I don't understand, like, you know, what's the American position on it? He goes, nah, Sami, do you know what the issue is? Is that the Saudis are concerned that if they're overtly seen to be on the Houthis, the Houthis might fire missiles, because Houthis are mad. Like Houthis will do it. Like they don't mind getting bombed.
Yeah.
Houthis will fire missile at the Saudis. If they fire missile at the Saudis, Bin Salman's got the Vision 2030 at this moment in time. So it's actually funny in that the Americans want to respond, but the Saudis want to make sure that they respond in a way that the Houthis don't. Now in his position, he knows what the Saudis are thinking. He doesn't know what the Houthis are thinking. But that's valuable information that came from a headline about the Houthis taking the Red Sea ship. So you're now seeing it from a different perspective. I don't need to see it from the Houthis' perspective. I need to see it from that guy's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you follow that train of thought one by one, and you present that thought to somebody else, all from different camps.
And you eventually start connecting the dots between all.
Eventually you connect the dots because you start finding common denominators. Mm-hmm. Everybody will have their bias, but you start seeing the common and you start piecing it. And sometimes it's good to have a whiteboard where you just put it down and you see, okay, this is what this person, this is what this person, okay, these are the common denominators. And sometimes, remember, also in politics, sometimes perception is more powerful than truth. And sometimes people act on perception, not on truth. Mm-hmm. And that can be just as valuable to know. Sometimes it's not the truth you're looking for. It's the lie that led to the action that took place. Right. Because where did that lie come from? Why was it there? What's the dynamics? How did they interpret that? All of these things are very valuable. I know I'm throwing so many things, but it shows just how many dynamics there are at play. But in a practical sense, I mean, we've been here for the last 3-4 days at the summit, and you've seen me sit from table to table to table to table. And sometimes it's just literally that. It's tell me what the world looks like through your eyes. Mm-hmm. I acknowledge my eyes don't see the whole picture. I acknowledge I have glaze over my eyes. I acknowledge why? Because Allah is the only one who knows everything. Mus'ab, tell me what this cup looks like through your eyes. Tell me what this news looks like through your eyes.
Is that because I have bad eyesight?
Mashallah. No, alhamdulillah. Your glasses make you look very sophisticated in life, man. Especially when you accompany it with that hair of yours. But anyway, but the point that I'm saying is that, like, what does it look like through your eyes? I think the other day, I can't remember what the topic was, but you made the remark where I was like, I didn't consider that. And that's why I think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as communities. You're not meant to know these things on your own. You're not meant to learn it on your own. You're not meant to study it on your own. You're not meant to analyze it on your own. You're meant to hear it and then go and check it, go and find it, go and talk to it, bounce the ideas off each other. And I often think when people ask this question, the reason why, I mean, you not complained, but you rebuked me earlier when you were at breakfast. You were like, I noticed I'm going to do this podcast because every time people ask you, your answer is never satisfactory. It's not that my answer is not satisfactory. It's that everyone wants the methodology to do it alone. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, you can't do it alone. I'm telling you, you need to be constantly on the move. You need to be constantly have your pulse on what's happening. You need to constantly be sitting with people so they can master the ideas. They don't need to be smarter than you. They don't even need to be in your field. Sometimes it could be a random field where someone has a piece of information they don't know is so valuable. But when you hear it, you suddenly realize it's valuable. It's like I always give the example, the one I showed on stage about wordsofjustice.org.
Yeah.
I did not know how to facilitate people to go and combat, the propaganda that the Zionists are. I told the guy, go and retweet, but make sure you tweet good morning in the morning and good night in the night so they know you're human. The AI guy didn't know that was a problem. He had the solution for it and established words of justice, which we've talked about before, like on the Thinking Muslim podcast. But the point is, without my problem, he doesn't know that it needs a solution. Mm-hmm. You need to put the two together. We're completely different industries. And I know it sounds like what I'm saying is vague, but anybody who rewinds and goes back, you'll find that the essence of the message of what I'm saying is very simple. There is no answer to your question if you're asking me as an individual. Mm-hmm. There is an answer if you ask me who my friends are, who are the people I hang out with, who do I give my time to, who do I bother to see, what is it that I'm interested in. People often say, okay, Sami, you quote things off top of memory. I don't have a good memory. It's just on the topics that I like, I have a good memory. I've read about the American Civil War. I barely know anything about it, honestly.
The 100 Years War and the War of the Roses, okay, I know it happened in the Tudor period. I can't tell you the details the way I tell you the details about, how Khalid ibn Walid defeated that. It's not my interest. Like, I'm not interested in it. My memory is not good because of that. My memory is good in the issues that I know about. Because al-mar'u ala dini khalili, it's a political hadith. This is the point I finish on. It's a political hadith, Mus'ab. Man is on the religion of his companions. If his companions are those who are interested in the affairs of the Ummah, you will naturally become a man of the Ummah.
Yeah.
If your friends are naturally interested in different fields related to the Ummah, you will naturally become a man of the Ummah. You'll be able to speak about Pakistan despite not being Pakistani. You will speak about Kashmir though you're not Kashmir. You will talk about how India appropriated, they broke the agreement on the Kashmir when they seized the South and Pakistan couldn't. And they're like, you're not a Pakistani. I know it because I'm a man of the Ummah, because my network are people of the Ummah.
It's almost like you're carrying their causes with you.
You carry their causes with you, not because they are their causes. It becomes your cause because they are the companionship we keep. And that's what I mean in that when sometimes people think that I exaggerate when I say that the hadith is a book of politics before it's a book of spirituality. When the Prophet Muhammad says that afshu salama bainakum, shall I tell you something that brings love between your hearts? Afshu salama bainakum, say salam to each other. Politically, Musab, when we walk, when we see each other in the breakfast when we're walking, there's a difference between me saying yo and walking, between saying Musab, hey, why are you dressed so well? Like, but you see already, like you're chuckling in an affection, it makes a difference in the way that you interact with me. It makes a difference in the subsequent conversation. It makes a difference in what you're willing to share with me. It makes a difference in how you're willing to confide in me. It makes a difference in what you're willing to tell me about what's happening in New York with Mamdani, with Cuomo and these others. When I sit in breakfast and decide to ask you, you decide to me, you know what, Sami, actually, and you tell me the story that you told me just before this, which I'm not going to repeat on this podcast because I didn't take it. It's confidential. But do you see how that hadith of the Prophet Muhammad you don't do it for Machiavellian reasons, of course, but you see how the hadith creates a framework and environment for political analysis. That's the point. Do you see how al-mar'u ala dini khalil, man is on the religion of his companions? You've seen me at this summit. You've seen the people that we've been keeping in our company. They are extraordinary people, right? Do you see how they've all been feeding us information about what's happening? And we've been sitting over food, me, you, and Arham, and these others who were sitting. We've been sitting together and going, guys, did you know I heard this? Oh, really? Because I heard this. Oh my God, if you piece the two together, and we've had those moments.
There's the map, yeah.
What brought it? Al-mar'u ala dini khalil. The man is on the religion of his companions. So the best answer I can give you, and the reason why I did this way is because if I answered it this way in the beginning, people would have laughed. Now that I've gone it this way, the best answer I can give you is go back to the ahadith and try to read them as political framework and analysis. And I promise you, you will find that your ability to analyze the news literally goes from here and it soars.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Because
is that a better answer than the one that you rebuked me?
That is.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah.
We're making progress. That's a really good point because I think something we've seen really start to come up, especially after October 7th and people being activated and starting to learn more about the world and feeling like they need to do something. We've seen the rise of a lot of people who will call themselves activists and an attitude that considers itself activist or analyst, and it's very much individually driven. It's very clear that it's unidimensional. It doesn't really actually. There's no depth to it, and there's also no range in the level of information that it's getting. So how do we differentiate, especially for the youth who are watching this? How do we differentiate when receiving analysis, when receiving information? How do you differentiate between that kind of vapid, shallow? I struggle to even call it analysis. It's really giving one's unenlightened take versus something that's more in depth.
But why are you assuming that the vapid, shallow analysis is useless to you? When you were with me on a few occasions when we were in America together, and I would often ask on the table beforehand, and I would say, guys, what is it that you feel needs to be addressed? And I remember you specifically and others would say, there are people in the community who are saying 1, 2, 3, 4. There are those who say 1, 2, 3, 4. And the entire subsequent talk is built on what? How to address those things that are being said in the community. That's not useless to me, that shallow, vapid analysis. What that tells me is that needs to be tackled before it becomes widespread.
Yeah.
It might be a concern that we mock and we laugh at, but it's also a concern that the person genuinely has based on a limited reading of what's happening. So that's a failure on my part and a failure on your part. And it requires us to go and tackle it. That tells me where the community is at the moment. Sometimes we assume in our bubbles, and I think you were there when we had that conversation. Actually, I said it to somebody else, one of the French delegation. I was like, you assume everybody knows what your life is like.
Yeah.
You assume everybody knows what you know.
Right.
You assume everybody lives life the way you live life. People don't. People live lives in very different ways. That person might not know what you know. And that's why you need to, when you know that's what the community stands, because there's a difference between going to a community and saying what you want to say, and therefore the message goes over their heads, and between starting your talk with, I know this is what your argument is. I know you built it based on this. I know you built it based on that. But did you consider one, two, and you've been there. We've seen how people's eyes suddenly just go like, oh, I didn't consider that.
Yeah.
It's like when, here's a good example. Protests don't work. We heard it a lot. I remember I came to New York as well, and some of your guys were telling me, people here are getting a bit tired of saying protests don't work. You're like, okay, because they didn't hear Naftali Bennett on Jordan Peterson Naftali Bennett told Jordan Peterson, the protests have devastated our influence.
They didn't see Bill Ackman texting Eric Adams, arrest these protesters in a group chat.
Then you show it to that community. But I would not have showed it had I not known that that's the issue that the communities are concerned. Mm-hmm. You don't just dismiss it as a shallow, vapid analysis. You're like, okay, I get it. That's the gap I need to fill. So you go and you stand in front of them. You're like, here it is. And you see everybody's faces go, oh, all right, you know what? I'll go to the protest on Saturday. Boycotts don't work. And a big sheikh who, was here at the summit once told me and said to me that, I think we're exaggerating in the impact of the boycott, until the Starbucks headline came out and said that we're losing the share price as a result. But so I go to a community like, they're getting a bit tired of boycott. I'm like, I saw a lot of Coca-Cola. They were like, people are unsure if boycott worked or not. But because I know that information, because I know it, or because, forget somebody telling me, because I sat with somebody who spent 1 hour, and this is a true story, telling me that boycotting is nonsense and boycotting doesn't work. And he spends 1 hour telling me.
An hour of information say on
1 hour, and he was telling me it doesn't work and this and what. And I was quiet. Why? I was fascinated. I want to know how he crafted that argument. I want to know what is he using in terms of bringing that. I want to know where he's getting his sources from. I want to know how this group of the community that I want to win over, because they are my brothers and my sisters. If they're not my brothers and sisters in faith, they're my brothers and sisters in humanity. I believe that the Quran takes people from dhulumat ila nur. Mm-hmm. I don't believe it makes you evil if you disagree with me or if you have a certain opinion, even if it is an evil opinion. I believe with da'wah, you can be saved from that evil opinion. But I want to know first, where are you getting from? I want to know what socio-historical memory is leading that to you. And after 1 hour, when I get it, I'm like, I got it. Now, I'm not going to respond to the guy. I need to go back to the hotel room. I need to go and broach the subject. I need to ask Arham, by the way, I sat today and the guy said 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Yeah, but Sami, you need to understand, these people historically in 1980s, such and such event happened, and what it did, it left a lasting scar and trauma in the community, which is why, I didn't know. Mus'ab, I heard this. No, Sami, what you need to know is that basically there was a case that happened in the courts where 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm understanding. So now when I go back and I craft my argument, I know to build it to address each and every one of these points in order to dismantle it. And this is what I meant earlier when you said, what's the framework in which that you understand politics? Yeah. Politics is a science of human relations. You don't need to know everything. You need to have the capacity, 1, to empathize, 2, to listen, and 3, to respect that even an opinion that is badly made and is shallow and vapid is made based on somebody's worldview that you need to understand if you want to make that opinion have more depth. And I like to think that because you were part of the process, when we were going to America, and that I was just an analyst, I was just giving, my opinion on the scene, but you were an activist. I like to think that methodology produced a result.
It's almost like you are describing that analysis as Sami, as a political analyst, isn't really just Sami, it's Sami with an entire network of people all over the world. It's
not even Sami. Sami is non-existent here. Sami comes as an empty vessel. Sami has his preconceived notions. But in the matter that's before me, Sami is an empty vessel. I need to be filled with the stories of everybody who's involved, even the people I don't like. Mm-hmm. I need them to fill, and I need them to be able to confide their stories in me. I want to hear it all. I want to know why some of the Shia supported Bashar al-Assad. I want to know what their worldview look. I want to understand how you supported a butcher.
What are their fears? What are their...
What did they fear? What were they scared of? Maybe they have a legitimate fear of reprisal. Like, I want to see what the world looks like through your lens. I want to see why those, the Syrians decided to take to the streets against Bashar al-Assad. I want to see why, I want to hear why the Iranians believe that in order to advance their agenda, they need to wave the flag of Hussein and Fatima instead of raising the flag of unity, instead of an event that happened 1400 years ago. I want to know why it's built into that system in terms of that's the way that they want to propagate. I want to understand why Hezbollah in Lebanon in the south believe they need to be separate from the government of Lebanon in order to maintain. I want to understand not just from the political angle, but emotionally. In the last Thinking Muslim podcast that we recorded just before this with Jalal, he was like, do we need to take the emotion? No, I want to understand emotionally. What is the pull of these forces? Because I don't want to see you eradicate. I believe that once we have that, then maybe I can see a road, but that road needs to be illuminated with all of those who are holding lights in different places. Yeah. If you put them all in the road, you see the road that you're going to. That's why Sami is irrelevant. Sami is only relevant insofar as once you have those stories, are there any parallels that I've seen elsewhere? That's when Sami gets involved. Have I seen this in Yemen? Have I seen it in the US? Have I seen it in the UK? Have
and
I
ironically,
seen it in South Africa?
That only works if you have been doing this process for quite a bit of time, filling up your vessel from other places so that you have that base that you can make the parallels from.
Even before that, it also comes from accepting the humiliation of that period when you thought you knew. And it's humiliating.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't, it's not that I'm not willing to talk about it. It's just that it's just, I don't want to bore people with the stories, but like, it wasn't always like this for me. Like it wasn't. Like there are times when you used to walk and be like, I understand politics. As a 20-year-old, 21-year-old. It's only after the Arab Spring in Tunisia, like as you go through, you realize, wait a minute, like I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Like, wait a minute, I didn't know this dynamic could make I didn't know. And you start, and what happens is you go through a phase where you're like, I know absolutely nothing. Like I'm useless. All these books didn't help me. Like all these books, I can talk smart about theory, like you were saying, when I ask you about books, don't mention Road to Make Muhammad Asad, we've heard it, don't mention it. But I understand your point insofar as what you're saying is the books aren't enough. And you're right. Like that's the point I'm saying. What I realized with the book like Road to Make Muhammad Asad, the one who's traveled reads it differently from the one who hasn't traveled.
Absolutely.
The one who's been to those areas reads it different from one who hasn't been to those areas. Yeah. When he goes to Afghanistan, for example, and he meets those guys in those villages, I went to those Kurdish villages in eastern Turkey as an 18-year-old. That experience he describes, I have a reference point for it. I know what he means when he says it was like an epiphany. Like I know, when you walk into a masjid, they heard I got screwed over in Istanbul. I told the story once in the Prophetic Living podcast. They found out that 18-year-old Muslim got screwed over by his football team. Most of them were non-Muslims. The city of Van, the small city, they heard about it and they literally left the team in dormitories and gave me the keys to a 3-bedroom flat. And they said, brother, wallah, I will never abandon you. Wow. And then when we entered the masjid the next day, there was supposed to be like an interfaith thing. Just the imam and the team. 500-600 locals turn up just because they heard a rumor that there's a guy from London who's fasting, who's Muslim, who got screwed over in Istanbul. And we want to see who this Muslim is. We want to protect him against, in their words, the kuffar. And then when we entered, the team went, whoa, like what's going on over here? And the Turkish translator goes, they came to see Sami. And then Alex asks the Imam, like, do you guys know Sami from before? And the Imam couldn't speak English properly. So he was like, Sami, me, Musulman. Allah, Musulman, one family. Me, Sami, brothers, brother. And I went, bun you lot, take that. Like I was really upset. But what I'm saying is that when Muhammad Asad has, I have that reference.
Shared experience.
So it means more to me. But not just that. As I went through Tunisia, I realized Muhammad Asad's stress, or Izzet Begovich's stress, when he's trying to talk to his people, to keep those values, to keep I began to feel it when I went to Tunisia, trying to convince Tunisians in order to, keep their nation away from the UAE's conspiracies. And they would respond and say, Sami, there's no hope for us here. Wallah, do you really want to help us? Give us visas to London. Like that will help us. Don't tell us, listen, you can stay here if you want. We don't want to stay here, we want to leave. And I realized what, the pain of Izetbegovic when he would try to say, no, how do you elevate these people, like even more, like, and is that even an arrogant thing to say and stuff? It's when those humiliations, when you realize you're not, that's why I'm not fond of academics as a rule.
Yeah.
Only because it's not that I don't respect the education that they've done. I respect an academic who went in the field. I don't respect an academic who did an undergrad, master's, and then immediately went to PhD. I've got no time for those people. Why? Because I believe that the world is not lived in the books, and that the books that you read cannot be understood unless you've interpreted them through the events that you've gone. It's like here's the example, the best example I can give. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the first wahi he receives in Hira, does Allah give him the full Quran?
No.
Do you think Allah made a mistake when he didn't give him the full Quran? No.
Of course not.
So of course not. You know, of course not. But that's what I'm saying in that.
Not trying to get cancelled.
Yeah, but the point I'm saying is that why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not give him the full Quran? And more than that, why did Allah order him to move despite the fact he did not have the full Quran? Why didn't Allah let him finish all of the studies before telling him to go and give da'wah? Why did Allah give him Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq and then tell him to go and spread the deen? Why didn't Allah make him perfect knowledge first and then go through? Why? And my theory is, and the theory of some ulama, so that it's not me a bid'ah coming up with it. The theory is that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he had received the Quran all in one go, he hadn't gone through the necessary experiences that required in order for him to understand the ayat that would later be revealed. For example, when Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha tells Waraq ibn Nawfal, her cousin, about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's experience in Hira, Waraq ibn Nawfal says to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I wish I was younger so that I could be with you when your people start to persecute you and drive you out. And he responds and says, why would my people drive me out and persecute me? The Prophet ﷺ in that instance demonstrates, even he at that point does not yet understand the gravity of the struggle that's about to come. And therefore, he's ill-equipped at that time to understand the full Quran, and therefore it's not revealed all in one go. Allah in His mercy makes sure he goes through those experiences. That's exactly the same with political analysis.
That's why later when the ayahs, it's almost like it's preparing him for the ayahs of Musa alayhi salam's stories to come down, the ayahs about Isa alayhi salam's stories to come down.
Even things related to dawah, abasa wa tawalla, aja'ahu al-a'm. The ayah comes down because he was talking to 4 kings, younger kings, thinking, or tribal chiefs, thinking they would be more effective in da'wah if I speak to the leaders of the tribes to take back. Old blind man walks in, or blind in one eye, or blind man, depending which report you read. He walks in, and the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell him go away, but abasa. Abasa means indicated a minor frustration at being interrupted. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, Abasa wa tawalla an ja'al a'ma wa ma yudrika la'allahu yazakka. How do you know, Ya Rasulullah, that this man might not be more valuable than the 4 over there? It's in that experience means the Prophet ﷺ understands the ayat that come down and he's able to act accordingly. It's the same with political analysis. The reason I mention this point is when we're talking about entering analysis as an empty vessel and then inheriting those stories, it's not humility in the spiritual sense. It's humility like, if you want to get it right, know that you're not immediately right.
Yeah.
If you want to get it right, listen first, like process it. Don't be the first one to speak. Don't be the first one to state their opinion. I don't like hot takes, like generally. Not because I fear that I'm going to get them wrong. It's like, why would I talk about something that I don't know enough about yet? I need to wait and see, assess, see the situation, whatnot, etc., in order to make the parallels and the like. That's what I mean in terms of gathering that information.
So Sami, with all that considered, how can youth elevate the political discourse of the Ummah? You've given us a lot to think about, and a lot of it relies on there being a collective that's also, caring about this and is doing work and reading and understanding. How can we elevate the political discourse of the Ummah specifically for youth, which I feel at this point is just mired in culture wars, gender wars, and all sorts of nonsense?
To be honest, the answer is at the end of your question. In spite of those that you said, love your Ummah. What I mean love them is love them the way you'd love a brother who did something wrong, but you love your blood brother, you don't cut the ties with them.
Absolutely.
You want to know what happened to your brother, what led to my brother doing that, what led to my brother saying that. You want to research about your brother, and it's not just the brother in your local community. You want to research your brother in Bosnia, in Uzbekistan, in Kazakhstan. You want to research your brother in the West African kingdoms. You want to go and meet with your brother. You want to knock on their door for Eid. You haven't been knocking on their door for Eid. You haven't been going to Ghana to knock on their door for Eid. You haven't been going to Nigeria to knock on their door for Eid. You haven't been going, not you specifically, but you haven't been going to South Africa to knock on the door for Eid. The Prophet Muhammad said, again, a hadith that can be taken spiritually but is more political, that al-Muslimu akhul Muslim, the Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. If he's your brother, you check in on your brother. You ask about your brother. How many of the youth go and learn about the history of these places? Go and learn about the stories of those places. What's happening in those places today? I'll give you an example. We took a group to Uzbekistan, and there was a man who was much older. Like you were talking about the youth, but I show you how the disease of the youth can carry all the way through, so you can spot it early. So he walked into a hotel in Uzbekistan. I think he was trying to get some water or stuff, and he saw that the hotel was selling alcohol, and it wasn't too far from the masjid. So he went, Astaghfirullah, a'udhu billah, you know these Uzbeks, you know, selling alcohol. So I got upset. So I said to him, Haji. He said, yeah. So this is your first time coming to Uzbekistan, yeah? He goes, yeah, I can't believe Muslim country in it. I said, so it took you 60 something plus years for you to come and visit this part of the Ummah. Shall I tell you who came here quicker than you? Russian tourists, German tourists, Korean tourists, European tourists, American tourists. Muslim tourists is a recent phenomenon. They came, and so the market adapted to them. The Ummah wasn't coming. The Ummah was flying over them to go to Tokyo. The Ummah was flying over them to go to Seoul in Korea. Ummah was flying over them. So the Ummah wasn't coming. So they adapted the market to those who came to see them, to those who took time to go and see them. And therefore, it's very natural that the hotel would adapt accordingly. Haji, I don't think the blame is on them as much as it's on you. You go to Bosnia, for example, and people will say, for example, in Bosnia, okay, but you know, Bosnia is nice, but this, and you're like, the Bosnians say they fly over us to go to Turkey. They fly over us to go to Dubai. They fly over us to go. They don't fly to Bosnia itself. My point is that sometimes the youth complain about the differences and the like. But my question to youth generally, and I consider myself part of them, you know, like I'm not an old man by any stretch of the imagination. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, like they're thinking Muslim youth as if like some sort of like elder who's come to lecture. No, not at all. Like I am part of the youth, you know. But in any case, the youth of old, Arham is laughing. That's why he's doing my flow. Keep this part. Don't edit this part out. But in any case, the youth of old, they had grand dreams, grand ambitions. Why? I read an interesting thing about Muhammad al-Fatih, because Muhammad al-Fatih took Constantinople at 21 years of age. The stories he was told when he was younger were stories of Sahaba, stories of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, stories of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, then stories of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, then stories of al-Ghazali, then basically the whole history of the Muslim Ummah until that period of 1453. So in his mind, the Ummah looks like a complete whole, and he's able to mobilize the entire Ummah in order to move towards Constantinople. We have many gaps in our memories. Like I give an example, like Hollywood, they propagated to the world that the hero of the world looks like Captain America. Where's the Muslim equivalent? Like I give an example, like I was in South Africa like a couple of weeks ago, and there's a mosque there called Awal Masjid. So the story of the masjid goes that here in this part of the world where we're right now, we're sitting in Malaysia right now, you've got a 20-something hour flight to go back to New York. Alhamdulillah, mine's only like 10 hours to Istanbul, and then I go to Sarajevo from there. But in any case, an Indonesian prince was fighting the Dutch occupier here. He loses the battle, they put him on a slave ship, and then he's taken to Cape Town, which was the furthest colony of the slaves for the Dutch. When he lands, he doesn't give up on life. He writes the whole Quran from memory by pen on a piece of paper. He keeps that Quran, and then when he finally buys his freedom, he buys a small plot, a Riva Muslima, Sophia, I think her name is. She donates a small building for him to use as a masjid. By the time he dies, he has 300 students, and Islam rapidly spreads from there, from Cape Town, and goes across South Africa.
And it's the first masjid in Cape Town.
And first masjid in Cape Town, and it's later reinforced by indentured slaves that come from India later on. My point is, you'd think this is a story that you would tell you would tell your 10-year-olds so they can see what the magnificence of the Ummah is, that even in calamity they could do so. A youth will go to 18, 19, 20, 21 years of age with no idea that this story ever took place. Here in Malaysia where we are, when Islam first came, when the traders were coming from Africa, from Muslims in Africa, from the Muslims in the Arab world, Islam began to take root here, and Islamic sultanates began to become established. The Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms became very angry. They launched a war in order to crush the Islamic kingdoms. Did you know that a Grand Admiral of a Chinese Navy called Zheng He went to Emperor Yongle? Yongle wasn't Muslim. Zheng He was a Chinese Muslim who'd been there for hundreds of years, because Islam had been in China already for hundreds of years, literally since 800 AD, probably even before that. In any case, Genghis goes to Yongle and says, Emperor, can I take a navy to go to those areas? And I think we can establish great trade with those kingdoms and we can even support some. He goes there, finds the Muslim kingdoms, reinforces them, and the Islam becomes established firmly in that area and it never leaves. It comes from... You're saying, wow. I said, wow, when I heard it. How many people aged between 20 and 30 know this story, which is an extraordinary... What I mean is, look at these gaps that's in our iOS software, you know, like in the... Because you're American, I use iOS for now, even though I'm Ahl Samsung wal Jama'ah.
I'm Ahl Android wal Jama'ah.
Ahl Android wal Jama'ah, ma'allim, Allah yahfazak. But anyway, iOS, Android, like the software, like it's missing so many components. It's missing components, for example, like in Uzbekistan, there was a young 17-year-old who was with us on the group, and he stood in front of the minaret where Genghis Khan once stood. So I told him Genghis Khan stood there. And he went, don't you think it's weird that like you don't feel Genghis Khan's presence here? Like he was here, the Mongols were here, they ransacked the city, but they've gone. So he left, but Islam stayed. We stayed in this hotel, it's a UNESCO protected heritage site. It belonged to a Russian noble. This Russian noble once believed he had conquered Allah and Islam in Uzbekistan. He didn't know that a couple of hundred years later, Allah would remove the Soviet influence from Uzbekistan and random Muslims from New York would be chilling in his courtyard where he once, thought he conquered Islam, and they'd be sleeping in his rooms like it's some sort of hotel. He left, but Islam stayed. How many people know these stories? And that's what I mean in that when you say what advice would you give for the youth or whatever, etc., even though I resent this question because I believe no one knows when they're going to die. Like you don't know if you're going to live 50 years or the like. Everyone talks about like they've got time to live. How do you know that you're going to live like tomorrow? You should be rushing to acquire as much deeds as you can to present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to enter Jannah. I don't believe in the old and young divide. I actually believe the old and young divide is a Western phenomenon or secular phenomenon that was introduced to Islam. I don't think Islam ever divided between old and young because the angels on the right side of the shoulder, they don't stop writing until your dying breath. There's no such thing as a retirement in Islam because the angels don't stop at 60 years of age. They don't put the pen down. They keep writing until that dying breath of yours, indicating you still have responsibility to do things even in that old age, which is why Abu Ayyub al-Ansari at 90 years of age knows the angels still writing, which is why he joins the army that goes to Constantinople and eventually he dies there and he's buried there because his interpretation is there is no young and old. But let's suppose I entertain you for a bit only because I'm a bit tired on this trip. Let's suppose I entertain it because I can't be bothered to push back too much on it. I would say to the youth that the software at the moment has more gaps than you think it does. We need to fill those gaps rapidly. We need to learn these stories rapidly because what these lenses will do is, you know how your phone looks different after you do a software update? The way you look at your phone looks different. The icons look different. That's what happens to your eyes. You go back to look at the same city, but now the buildings look different. The people look different. The icons look different. Everything, the more you update the software system, the more the same thing that you saw yesterday begins to look different because you start seeing new things you didn't notice before because the software now is giving you more parallels to compare them to, and now you're seeing more opportunities. You're having more hope. You're saying, yes, there's a genocide in Gaza, but Bosnia got through a genocide too. They committed genocide in Srebrenica. Mladic was the one who went to The Hague. The families of Srebrenica, many of them went back to Srebrenica. So they didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve. They said they erased Islam. They failed to erase Islam. Banja Luka in 93, they destroyed the 18 masajid. In 2001, 9 imams they went. Last year they finished the 18th masjid. You do these parallels, no matter what happens, no matter what happens, no matter what happens, I've got a software that tells me that I have a precedent as recent as 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that I can win, that I can move forward. And I think the best epitome of this, and this is the point I finish on, is there was a doctor from Gaza who came with us last year in August. He's in America. So he's based in Arkansas. Originally grew up in New York and then went to Arkansas or New Jersey. But in any case, went to Gaza. Then from Gaza, he came to Bosnia to join the group. On the 6th day of the itinerary, he said to me, Sam, it was a free day for the group. He said to me, Sami, I want to go to Banja Luka. I've told the story before. There's no need to repeat like the whole story again. As in about the Banja Luka one. I told him, Banja Luka's far, it's 3 hours away. He goes to me, but Sami, I came to Bosnia because of your Banja Luka story about the 18 masajid being destroyed and then being rebuilt. And I was like, yeah, but I know for you guys, like, going to Bosnia was like, oh, like, I only get 4 weeks leave a year. Why don't I just go to a resort in Turkey? Do I really want to go somewhere that I won't?
Relax a little bit.
Yeah, relax. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I know that, you know, you had to really, you know, to make you, that's something I love your ummah. We think we love the ummah. But when you have your weeks of leave, you're not thinking about, I want to go and learn about it. You're thinking, listen, like, I'll read that in the books, man.
Go to the all-inclusive.
Yeah, like, they're not worth my time. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, why am I going to waste my leave? Like, go and listen to these, like, stories. Or honestly, but in any case, so he was like to me, no, but I'm here. Like, I want to go to Banja Luka. So I was like, it's far, man. Like, it's 3 hours and it's a mountain road. He said, I'll go in Fajr and I'll come back in Isha. So I looked at Dino, like one of our friends and who works with us at Hala Travel Guide. I told him, Dino, do you mind taking them? Dino was like, all right, I'll take them Fajr and come back Isha. I said, okay, fine. So they went. When the doctor came back, bear in mind, like, beforehand, he was telling us stories about Gaza. He was like, Sami, I'll be honest with you. I listened to your videos, but I got to tell you, man, like, I don't know how Gaza is going to be rebuilt. Like, wallah, Sami, it's destroyed. He said to me, Sami, like, you know how they talk about human shields? He said, I was the human shield. He said, Sami, Palestinians would wake me up in the morning and they would say, doctor, the pantry is over this side. Can you accompany us? Because they have your coordinates. And because they have your coordinates, they won't bomb an area where you are. So can you come? So he goes, I'd make like 5 trips every morning to the pantry and back so that they wouldn't get bombed. He said, Sami, I got on the plane. So I went to Lebanon and then got on a plane. He goes, wallah, Sami, and he starts crying when he gets to this part of the story. He goes, I felt like I was removing the shield from them so I could go back to a life of luxury in America. So anyway, he comes back from Banja Luka and this time he's smiling. Like, he's really smiling. So I said to him, doctor, how was it? He said to me, Sami, those imams, they're amazing. He goes, Sami, after hearing the story of how they rebuilt the masajid, how they went to hostile territory, how they did it in the heart of the enemy, Sami, man, like, I left Banja Luka. Like, I'm convinced, like, that not only Gaza is going to be, I'm convinced Gaza is going to be rebuilt.
He saw it.
And I know Palestine is going to, what happened to the software? This is the point I'm making. The software did an update.
Yeah.
Like that story, the software didn't update, and suddenly he's looking at the same scenario, but now he has the icons look different, the parallel looks different. And that's my advice I give you. You know when you know earlier you were saying to me, don't mention Road to Mecca, don't mention it's a bigger. The only reason I repeat it is that I still meet people who are like, oh yeah, you mentioned the book. Did you read it? No. There's a book I couldn't find. I'm not saying it because it's like, just do like a homework or that kind of thing. You asked me the question, what are the books that moved you the most? Those two and others, they moved me so deeply as an 18-year-old. I'm telling you, Musab, they transformed the entire trajectory of the life that I would take. They completely transformed the lens with which I interpreted events. You know, when I finished the book, Road to Muhammad Asad, I wanted to be a footballer, soccer player. I love, I know you don't speak English very well, Benny. I'm joking, I'm winding you up.
Look at this guy.
but the thing is, I'm saying is that when I read the book Road to Mecca, I remember putting the book down. And my dad had given it to me. My dad was like, please read this, my son. I was like, all right, fine. When I put the book down, wallahi, I was like, Allahumma, Allahumma. I remember doing sujood, Allahumma, give me a life like this guy. Give me a life where I can just serve. Allahumma, I don't want to be a leader. I don't. I want to be like Muhammad Asad, where you reinforce this in Saudi Arabia, and then you reinforce Umar Mukhtar in Libya, and then you go to Allama Iqbal and you reinforce his theory. Then Pakistan, you reinforce the constitution, and then like you're a man of the ummah, like you travel and you go and wherever you see where you can fit as a piece, you push this way and you push. You're like, guys, okay, and now I'm on to the next. I was like, Ya Rabbi, if I live a life like Muhammad Asad, I would die a happy man, no matter what the situation is. It's an extraordinary, and I like to think someone, I didn't think about this the other day, but somebody here at the summit was like, when I told this story, he was like to me, Sami, I think your dua was answered. Really. And there's something really beautiful about when they said it, because it didn't dawn on me, going to America, going to Australia, going to South Africa, going to these places. It didn't dawn on me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had blessed me with that dua. No, really, like to be like of service to the ummah, where you sit and people are saying, Sami, what's your, and you're like, I tell people, like, it's like the other day, somebody said to me, okay, Sami, what can I do for you? I said, you're asking the wrong question. Like, I like your project. Like, just find a place for me. Like, I want to serve. Like, ask me anything and I'll do it. Like really. And they'll be like, okay, like that's not what a speaker should say. No, I'm like, genuinely, like I want to be part of these initiatives that go. That's what Muhammad Asad did to me. What Izzat Begovic did to me was, he showed me the reality of what it means to be a man of the Ummah in an environment where the whole world abandons you and leaves you abandoned to genocide. The horrible choices that are presented to you, how ugly it can be, but how faith can guide you through it. Izzat Begovic said at the end of his book, he wrote, if Allah gave me the chance to live in this dunya again, I'd reject it. But if I had to live my life again, I would live it exactly the same way that I lived it. Meaning, I was glad I took Islam as my guide. The mistakes I made or the good things I was glad that I held on to Islam through it. And if those decisions meant I died with Islam, then I would live my life the same way so I could have my Islam. It's extraordinary the way he's thought about it. And it completely transformed what I wanted to achieve in life. You know, sometimes we have these leader summits. Everybody wants to be a leader. When the hadith says you shouldn't seek it. I'm not saying it's not good to train leaders, but there's something worrying about those who want to be leaders. Because what it says to me, it's like somebody said to me, I got rebuked by somebody sitting in this room who said, why is it when students ask you about help with politics and stuff, like you're not really like overtly, and I was like, because when they ask, I don't feel like they know what they're asking. They're asking about it like it's glamorous. They're asking about it like it's wow. They're not asking like, I know this road is stormy. I know it's a very hard road, and I know there's a possibility at the end of it that I won't get the glory that I'm looking for, but I still want to do it. I don't get asked like that. I always get asked, so I'm just like, no disrespect, but like, you're not asking properly, and whatever I say to you, the lens is not going to be interpreted properly. Because I was once like that. I want to do it. And I remember my dad used to be like, not like my dad, like I'd accompany him everywhere. But I remember whenever I would eagerly ask him, his attitude would almost be like, sit down, son.
Yeah.
When I came to him during the Tunisia period, telling him, Baba, I'm stuck, I don't know. That's when I felt my relation with him bloom. Because it was like, in hindsight, he had recognized that I finally understood it's not a pleasant path. Like it's a heartbreaking one. It's one full of, which is why we say, what advice do you give to the youth? My advice would be to them, honestly, is you don't need to pursue it. There are other avenues.
Yeah.
Like it's not a path that someone that was saying, talk us through your career. I was like, I stumbled through it. Like sometimes I look back on things that I said and I did, and I'm not even sure if, it was the wisest thing to do at the time. I always give this story, although like Jalal is in the room, so like, but in any case, like I'd say it anyway. When he invited me for raving in Riyadh, bear in mind, Jalal had already invited me like 4 or 5 times. And bear in mind, like, I didn't know Jalal before, so I was like, what's this thinking Muslim thing? Like, do you know what I mean? I was
Brand
like,
seems interesting.
what is this? Like, what is this? Whatever, etc. Anyway, it turns out when he invited me, when I eventually turned up, he had sent me a message when my dad was sitting next to me giving me a lecture about ignoring people. So I thought maybe it's a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like maybe, no, wallah, like it was genuine like that. So I replied, I said, yalla, who's going to watch the episode anyway? Like he wants to talk about Saudi, but who's going to watch it? It's like some, no disrespect, but like I know, mashallah, may Allah bless him and elevate, Thinking Muslim and the team that he brought with him and everything. And I'm the #1 supporter fan. I like to think of myself as that.
Memes say this so as well.
In any case, so I go and I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this like a therapy session. I'm going to use it so that even if no one listens to it, Allahumma, I spoke the haqq on what happened and I poured everything in that analysis and in that whatever. Next thing I know, it went viral. And I was like, uh-oh. That was my reaction. My reaction was, uh-oh. Like, I think I'm in trouble. And he was happy about it. I was, but I was like, what do I do now? No, but literally, but that's what I mean, in that everyone thinks that it's done in the sense of, okay, here's my grand strategy. Yeah. Here's what, it's really not. I take it battle by battle. Today it's Gaza genocide. Before it was, I don't know, like punish genocide, like with Harris or punish Harris or that kind of thing. Before that it was, trying to prevent the UAE from completing its crushing of the Arab Spring and working on communications, like whether it's, Turkey, Qatar, whether it's, the like. It was about, with the Saudis, how can you, present the narrative that Saudis are justified when they're worried about their security, like they're literally surrounded, How can you offer a more nuanced understanding of the Ummah in terms of it's like battle by battle, like how do you move forward, like in that regard? And I don't know where this path leads, because this is the point that I finished on, and this is the most frightening aspect of it. When you say, what advice do you have for the youth? When you update the software and you start inheriting these stories, you also start to appreciate the reality of this dunya, in that this dunya truly is not the abode of the believers. When you're in Uzbekistan, I knew the story of Imam al-Bukhari. Like, I knew it, but I didn't know how it ended. I knew that he became a muhaddith, and I was like, mashallah, ends the story. I didn't know that when he went back to Bukhara, after becoming the top don of, like hadith,
Yeah.
the emir of the city was upset that Imam al-Bukhari was giving open lectures, because he felt it was an insult to his prestige, to the emir's prestige. So the emir said, a scholar like you should be teaching only the nobility. I want you to be the personal tutor to my son. So Imam Bukhari says to him, how can I, who took a hadith from open circles that imams would give for free, how can I, who got the hadith from these open circles, then close that knowledge off for a select elite? Wallahi, I will not do it. So the emir exiles him from Bukhara. When Bukhari leaves Bukhara heartbroken, he goes towards Samarkand, crosses the desert towards Samarkand. The emir of Samarkand hears that he's coming, and then says, I don't want to offend my friend who's the emir of Bukhara. Do not let Bukhari enter the city of Samarkand. So Bukhari is stuck between the two cities, and he makes a dua. He says, Allahumma dhaqat alayya al-ardu bima rahubat. The earth has become tight for me. If this is what it's going to be like, then it is preferable for me to return to you. And he dies soon after in the Kashgant between Bukhara and between Samarkand. That's Imam al-Bukhari. When you learn these stories, you realize the ending is not always what you think it is. That Indonesian hero that we talked about ended up losing the battle against the Dutch and being sent as a slave, but Allah made him serve a purpose differently, like in Cape Town. When you start inheriting those memories and those stories, and this is the point when I said when you take it battle to battle, what has Allah written for me? My friend in Bosnia, Almir Pajovic, one of our guys when we went to Srebrenica, he said to me, Sami, I notice in your podcasts and in your lectures, you like mentioning Yusuf alayhi salam because he was Al-Aziz in the end. You like mentioning Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam because he entered Mecca in the end. You like mentioning Musa alayhi salam because he was saved in the end. You like mentioning Nuh alayhi salam because he was saved in the end. But I noticed something, brother. I said, what, Almir? You never mention Ashab Ukhdud. You don't mention Yahya alayhi salam. Maybe because he was executed, brother. I feel like sometimes, brother, if you will accept it from me, I feel like you are selling dunya, not selling akhirah sometimes. You are selling dunya at expense of akhirah. I said, whoa, chill, man. Like, that's a bit too far. My dad had repeated the same thing later.
Wow.
He said to me, for example, when we come to Srebrenica, these are like Ashab al-Ukhdud. These Allah didn't write for them to become Al-Aziz like Yusuf. They are like Ashab al-Ukhdud. But because they are like this, Allah give them Jannah while me and you are stuck here trying to avoid Jahannam. And this is why my greatest advice, and I finish on this point, is I would encourage anybody who's listening to this, once the podcast is finished, go and find the seerah book that's gathering dust on your shelf. Pull it out and go through it, and stop at every Sahaba when they meet their fate. Just pause. So Sumayya radhiyallahu anha will probably be the first one you pause. And ask yourself one question. If I lived all of my life, and that's how Allah made my ending, would I still say Allahu Akbar with the same vigor that I would say it if I was Umar ibn Khattab who entered Mecca afterwards? Would I, can I accept, if that was to be my fate that Allah has written, would my soul leave my body and I would say, Allahumma, what a wonderful return to you. Like, I'm glad to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because I think about this often, that the prophets, they were all given a choice before they died. They were asked, do you want to stay in this dunya or do you want to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And they all chose to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't want to linger in this dunya to see the result. They all desperate to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask myself, am I desperate to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Like, man kana yarju liqa'a rabbih. Those who want to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Let them do good deeds. When I read that ayah today, everyone likes to say, okay, it means go do good deeds. But the first part, مَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ. Like, do you long to meet Allah? Are you like, Ya Rabb, I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to meet the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu. Is that the attitude, or do we have the attitude of, Ya Rabbi, don't make me like Ashab al-Ukhdud or like whatever, like I don't. I'm not saying it's not wrong to say, Allahumma give me a good ending. The Prophet ﷺ made it. But my point is, as you go through the seerah and you read it, it kind of makes you ask real questions about yourself, about your relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once you do that and ask yourself the right questions, what happens is you go back to the first question that you asked. You become an empty vessel. I don't know. And I'm happy I don't know. And it's okay that I don't know. So let me inherit the memories that I don't know. Let me go and talk to people that I don't know. Let me establish the companionship so I can fix that I don't know. And then that way you become a master political analyst who can truly predict what's going to happen next, bi-idhnillah.
Jazakumullah khairan, Brother Sami. So we usually end off with the question of, what's a book that has had an impact on your life? And I did give you the caveat, no Ali Jaizad Begovic, no Ibn Khaldun, no Muhammad Asad. I'll let you get off with the seerah this time. only if you recommend a specific seerah book.
To be honest, it depends. I'm not fond of flowery books.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like them. I like Martin Ling's Life of Prophet Muhammad only because there's a heavy emphasis on the facts as it came. And there's not too much of the reason the Prophet ﷺ did this. It's like, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what was said. I prefer that kind of approach, like going towards it. Martin Ling's is very good. There are some good Arabic ones, but given this an English podcast, we'll leave it with the Martin Ling's podcast. I haven't finished Sheikh Yasir Qadhi's one, at this particular moment in time. But I'm sure there are other seerah books out there that I need to discover myself, and maybe we'll discover them soon, inshallah.
Inshallah, maybe on the next episode.
Inshallah.
Jazakumullah khairan, Brother Sami, and Jazakumullah khairan to our audience for listening in. What we try to do with the Thinking Muslim podcast is elevate the political discourse for the youth of the Ummah. And the best way to do that is to learn, read, analyze, just like we have done on this podcast. If you liked what we had, leave us a comment and let us know. And if you didn't, also leave us a comment. Like, share, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Please remember to subscribe to our social media and YouTube channels, and head over to our website thinkingmuslim.com to sign up to my weekly newsletter. Jazakallah khair.